What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about squarebills. You know, shallow running crankbaits is quickly becoming one of my favorite ways to catch bass. Now that we are officially into fall, I believe we got into fall a couple days ago, the water temps are dropping, the air temps are dropping, these fish are schooling up, and a squarebill is a great way to put a lot of fish in the boat. So I'm going to break down the gear I use, the baits I use, why I use them. You know, just like every bait, there are specific purposes for individual baits. You know, you don't just go tie out on a regular crankbait and just go throw it all the time, right? You have crankbaits that have different actions, different depths, those sort of things. So I'm going to get into some of the baits, some of my favorite baits. You know, Strike Kings, River Sea Biggie, Lucky Craft, BDS series, Lucky Craft RTO series. I have a lot of squarebills. Like I said, it's quickly becoming my favorite way to catch them. So I'm going to go through the gear, the rods, the reels, the line, the baits, the hooks, all those sort of things. So I'm actually going to call this part one, only because Matt loves throwing squarebills as well, and he has a little more confidence in some baits that I haven't spent a lot of time in. The Megabass S-Crank is a great squarebill. It wanders a lot. I haven't got to throw it a lot, so he's got some favorites. The old favorite, the Speed Trap. You know, how could you go wrong with that? And so today I'm going to talk to you guys about the baits that I have confidence in, that I have a lot of time invested in, the system that I use that has worked for me, and maybe here in a couple weeks we'll get Matt behind the camera and show you guys some of his favorite squarebills. Again, fall time, it's a great time to cover a lot of water, moving baits, reaction baits, and get those fish feeding up for winter time to engulf a bait. So let's talk about baits themselves. Squarebills, for those of you guys who don't know, it's a shallow running crankbait. Now, I'm not going to get into the bigger squarebills, you know, the Strike King 8.0s, the Lucky Crafts. That's a completely different video. I'm talking about your traditional 1.5 to 2.5 inch squarebills. They're going to dive anywhere from 2 feet to 5.5, 6 feet. So let's dive into the baits. Right off the bat, let's talk about the River to Sea Biggie. You can hear that one knocker in there. This is a great California Delta bait. A lot of tournaments have been won on this bait. Let me back up a little bit. I like that bait when I'm trying to find the fish. When the water is murky. You have a storm blow through, churns up the water, kind of discolors the water. I like squarebills with rattles in them in those types of conditions. Primarily, this is my opinion only, primarily I throw silent squarebills. Me personally, I feel like they get bigger bites. I know probably a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but for me personally, I tend to get bigger bites when I'm finesse fishing a crankbait or I'm using a crankbait that is silent. So you have rattles, you have silent squarebills. I kind of covered that. But getting back to this biggie, this is a great bait. It dives between 4 and 5 feet. Great color selections. Great sound. Another one of my favorites is going to be the Lucky Craft BDS series. They come BDS 2, 3, and 4, and that has to do with the size of the bait and the depth it dives to. I typically like the 3. As you can see on all my crankbaits, I upgrade the hook, so I will get into that a little bit later in this video. But the BDS 3 is a great silent squarebill. Both the Biggie and the BDS crankbaits are great warm water crankbaits. What I mean by that, crankbaits have different running actions. They have real wide wobbles and you have some that have real tight wobbles. You typically want a real wide, aggressive, thumping squarebill in your warmer weather months, your Septembers, Octobers, Novembers. When you start getting into the cold weather months, January's, February's, March's, that real cold weather, that's when you want a crankbait that runs really tight. Now this applies to all crankbaits, your deep diving, shallow diving, and your medium diving crankbaits. My next favorite Squarebill is gonna be the Lucky Craft, whew, those hooks are sharp, RTO series. Now this is a little bit smaller bait. I throw this on a little bit smaller setup. This is a bait that I like to finesse crank, if you will. Again, it's a silent bait. But these, Tackle Warehouse has a killer deal on these right now. I think they're like $8 or $9. Typically they're probably double that, but I loaded up on these. I like these baits a lot. So when I am throwing a Squarebill, what am I looking for? I am looking for fish that are holding in those last grass patches. You know, we're going into the fall, the winter, this grass is dying down. You look for those sparse grass patches. I like throwing a crankbait right through the top of that. The reason that I have so many Squarebills is because the depth they run. You know, I have a system that I like to run depending on the depth. You know, if this grass is in the 4 to 5 foot range, I'm gonna throw the BDS crankbait because I want that to dive down and just tip the tops of the grass. And the 1.5 runs a little bit shallower. It's got a little bit different thump to it. Another good one is the Strike King. This bait here runs right around 5 feet. So if the water's a little bit deeper, I will switch over to the Strike King. You can see here this one has rattles in it. Another little trick right here I'll show you guys that I do. If you forget what these baits run, the depths they run, I will take a little Sharpie and write. This one has number 5 on it, so I know that runs to 5 feet. I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff, so anything that I forget, or if you guys have questions on, down in the comments below, hit me up with those questions and we'll get to those. Also, all the bait links, all the gear that I'm talking about, I'm gonna blow through some of this fairly quickly, will be down in the video description. Goes right to the links to the baits, all that stuff to Tackle Warehouse. So getting back to the system, I run typically that 2 to 5 foot range. I will run the 3 different baits: the Strike King, the 2 Lucky Crafts, and the River Sea, the Biggie. Now let's talk colors. I like to keep it simple. I know my boxes don't really say that or don't show that, but if you look closely, I will have a shad pattern. I will have a clear water pattern like a ghost minnow, or like a, what's the Strike King, like a clear water minnow, something like that. I will have a craw pattern, and then I'll throw in a chartreuse of some sort, something that has a little bit more flash for when that water is murked up. If you keep it that simple, it's actually fairly easy. You know, if you want something a little bit more flash, you can go with, like, let's say like an American shad from Lucky Craft. You know, has that foil scale on there. But again, a shad pattern, a clear pattern, a crawdad pattern, and some type of bright color, like a chartreuse and blue, chartreuse and black, something like that. So we've talked about rattles, non-rattles. We've talked about colors. We've talked about the different baits. Let's talk about rods and reels. I like a shorter rod for squarebilling. Now, if I'm running, say, the face of a dam, that riprap, or I'm on the California Delta and I'm running a channel, I can get away with a longer rod, a 7.6, let's say. But typically I run between a 6.10 and a 7.2 or 3 composite rod. I like the shorter rods because when I'm in and around cover, when I'm in and around docks, and I'm fishing dock pilings or little tule patches or stuff that's very specific, you got to make real accurate casts. it's a lot easier to be accurate around docks with a shorter rod. Again, if I'm fishing open water and I'm just covering water, you could get away with a 7.4, 7.6 rod. Real quickly, the composite rods, I traditionally don't use the glass rods. It's just a preference. I know some guys swear by cranking with glass rods. I like the composite rods. To me, they're a little bit faster tip and more sensitivity. I crank almost all the time with braid to a leader. And the reason for that, I'm sure a lot of people are like, I crank with mono, I crank with a glass rod and mono, or I crank with fluoro. But my reason for that is I like triggering fish. When I am running my Squarebill and I bang or I touch a piece of grass, or I hit a rock, or I deflect off something, I give that rod a little pop. I want to give that bait some action, right? I want to make those fish commit. You know, typically when these fish are eating these baits, they're not eating them because they're hungry. It's how they were designed. It's a cat-like reflex. When that thing pops off, those bass just come up and grab that bait. They're not wanting to eat it. They're not trying to eat it. It's just the natural reaction. So with braid, no stretch. When I hit that, whatever structure it may be, when I deflect off of that, I give that rod a pop or a reel twitch, I want that bait to react. I don't want that glass rod to load up and then twitch and then unload. I don't want that mono to stretch. I feel like I have quicker response time with the braid to leader when I'm throwing the Squarebills. It's just a personal preference. If you guys haven't tried it, you should try it. The sensitivity is amazing. I can feel everything that's down there. I can feel everything these baits are ticking off of. And it's just a good way to go. You know, when I hit something, I want to pause it or make that bait bounce off of it and make those fish react. 9 times out of 10, that's when you're gonna get your bites. So this is a Dobyns 704 CB. It is not the 704 glass. It is the CB. It's a composite rod. It still has a moderate fast tip. It's not super slow. It's not a moderate, anything like that. So it still has a fairly good load to it. So when you do stick those fish, they stay pegged. But you guys have seen in some of our underwater videos how fast those fish come up and just spit out a bait. So I like to be able to feel what's going on down there. You still want a little bit soft tip. 2 other rods real quickly that I've had a lot of fun playing around with are the Megabass rods. This is the Levante. This is their flat side special. This is a rod designed for Squarebills. This is a 7-foot moderate fast action rod. And this is actually their higher end rod. This is their Megabass Destroyer. I paired that up here with a Revo MGX. It's just a super light combo. This is actually their 110 special. This is their Ripton rod special, but it works great for the bigger Squarebills. Hooks. I upgrade all of my hooks to aftermarket hooks. I'm not going to get too in-depth on hooks. If you guys have not watched Matt's seminar on picking the correct treble hooks, I will put a link up here, one of the corners. That is a must-watch for any bass fisherman to understand the difference between a round bin and an EWG, a short shank. That is just awesome information. You guys need to watch that. So, getting back to these crankbaits. They come stock hooks. I upgrade all of my crankbaits to either round bins, short shank EWGs, or EWGs. Real quickly, an EWG has a tip point that's angled in. A round bin has a straight shank, and a short shank hook, EWG, has the tips angled in, but the actual length of the hook, the height of the hook, is shorter. So if you want to run a Squarebill with a 1/0 instead of a 1, and you don't want the front and back hooks hooking each other, you would go with a short shank. Rule of thumb, typically what I use, if the fish are slapping at the bait, and this applies to rip baits, this applies to crankbaits, swim baits, any of it. If the fish are coming up and swatting at the bait, I will go with a round bend style hook. Owner ST36s. If the fish are engulfing the bait, if they're just choking the bait, I will go with an EWG style hook. They're getting the hook in their mouth. Once it penetrates, it's got that angle to it. It's harder for them to come off. And if I want to go with well, there's two hooks. I really like, let me show you this bait. I really like these new hooks. They're actually cranking hooks by Owner. They are called the short shank stinger treble hooks. And if you can see this, I'll try and get some close-ups. This has a 150-degree angle on that gap right there. So what that allows this bait to do, when this bait is running, that's how the back hook is running. It comes through grass a lot easier than, let's say, having a treble down like that and snagging up on everything. Same with the belly. It allows that hook to run flush to the belly and be as weedless as possible. I've had a lot of luck. I'm really liking that style of hook. Real quickly, if you guys haven't watched the video, I think I did it about a year ago, there is a right and a wrong way to put your treble hooks on all of your baits. We're talking squarebill. So when you are putting your hooks on your baits, you don't want to put, if I put this on the other way, if I flip this around, that one hook point is going to rest against the belly and it's not going to allow that hook to sit flush against the bait. Again, if I put this on backwards, now I'm going to be running with a hook point down versus a hook point up, so you're going to snag more stuff. That goes with all treble hook baits. Make sure you guys are putting the hooks on the correct way. If you guys haven't seen that video also, I'll link up to the top. But that's retrieves. I won't get into too much on that, but again, I'm wanting that bait to react. So every 3 or 4 cranks, I'm pausing, I'm popping. I'm wanting that bait to do stuff besides just run right back to me, right? I don't want it to run straight back to the boat. I want it to deflect. I want it to pause. I want it to back up. Those sort of things. Like I said, Matt, that Megabass S crank wanders a little bit. Rapala makes one that does that. It's called Hunting, and those are good baits as well. Again, I just don't have enough time on the water with those baits to give a proper representation of them. All right, guys, so there's a little mini seminar on squarebill fishing. A few baits that I highly recommend, a few baits that I have tons of confidence in. We'll link to some colors down below. But remember, change out your hooks, use the proper rod action, and try the braid to leader thing. I think you guys really like it. I do it on my lipless cranks. I do it on you know, most things now, just because the sensitivity is so much better than without just straight fluoro or mono. And again, you guys have seen some of those underwater videos when those fish come up, bite a bait and spit it out before. I mean, some of those fish, we can see them eat it and we can't even react fast enough to set that hook. So the proper rod will keep those fish hooked. Proper hooks will keep those fish hooked and put more fish in the boat for you guys. Again, if you guys have any questions, if I skipped over something too fast, too quickly, leave your question down below in the comment section and Matt and I will try and get to it. But again, guys, hope this video helps. It's fall time. Get out there, cover a lot of water, look for these schooling fish, look for the aggressive fish, find them with a bait that has some rattle, has some flash in it. Dissect that school with a finesse crankbait, a quieter crankbait, and I think you will find you'll put bigger and more fish in the boat. Guys, thanks again. Hit that like button if you guys like the video. Remember to subscribe to our channel. Matt and I were doing 3 videos a week, and we really appreciate all the support, guys. Hope you guys have a good day. We'll talk to you soon.